Scott Arney from Esoteric Guides. I'm really happy to be interviewing this evening Salman Sheikh, an esoteric author and Sufi. He's written a number of really fascinating books on Sufi influences on Freemasonry, voodoo, and also the Islamic Sufi influence on Aleister Crowley and Thelema, which we're going to focus on tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Salman. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Salman. How are you today?
Wa alaikum assalam, my dear brother. First, I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. The honor and privilege is mine. And the purpose of this study is to not basically say that, not to take away the due rights and credit of Western esotericism, but to show that there is a missing bridge that we need to connect to give love and respect to all sides so that we can understand each other. As it says in the Quran, Allah says that we have created you into a nation of tribes and nations and different races so you can get to know one another. So yeah, that is the purpose of this, and I prepared a meaningful presentation for your audience. So without further ado,
Yeah, mashallah. Do you want to talk a little bit first about your own spiritual path? Because you are the representative of the Fatimiyya Sufi order in North America, which I
yeah,
find fascinating.
definitely.
Um,
So
and
what
you're,
I've done
yeah,
for you, my brothers, I've included that I've included all of those answers in this presentation for you.
very cool. Okay, let me. Okay,
Can
I'm
you
going
can you
to.
see this?
Yeah, let me. I'm going to make you solo. 1 second. There we go.
All right. So without further ado, this presentation focuses on the Islamic Sufi influence on Aleister Crowley and Thelema, and I made this from my brother and friend. So with the disclaimer as we begin, first I say welcome to Esoteric Guides TV. Before we begin, a necessary disclaimer. The following presentation is created for entertainment, education, fair use, and free speech purposes. The views expressed herein represent my own independent research and perspectives. This presentation is entirely dedicated to esoteric exploration and is not intended to encourage anyone to join any specific order, religion, or follow any particular individual. I ask you simply to absorb the history, analyze the hidden currents of occult transmission, and take these profound teachings to apply them to your own life where needed. We are about to shatter the Eurocentric veil that has obscured the true origins of Western esotericism for over a century. Prepare to view history, magic, and mysticism through an entirely new paradigm shifting lens, and with respect to our European brothers as well, without taking anything away from them. Now, as we move on, we see the veil that we were surrounded with, that for generations, the academic and occult corridors of the West have perpetuated a deliberate omission, presenting Aleister Crowley and the Ordo Templi Orientis as products of distinctly European forces, born of Protestant rebellion and matured in Masonic lodges. This narrative systematically neglects the monumental contributions of the Islamic world, constructing a Western esoteric canon built entirely in its own image through the lens of colonial Orientalism. We are told Thelema emerged in a vacuum, but the daring truth is that Crowley's metaphysical architecture was deeply indebted to Islamic cosmology, prophetic frameworks, and Sufi praxis. This presentation is an act of historical restoration. We will map how Islamic metaphysics predates and informs the very systems Crowley would later formalize, revealing a hidden initiatic access upon which much of his occult empire was secretly built. From his invocation of Arabic verses to his structural mimicry of Sufi orders, Crowley was not merely appropriating a dead culture, he was embracing a living, vital force that harmonized perfectly with his inner doctrine of will. It is time to tear away the veil and confront the undeniable Islamic roots of the occult West. Moving on, the path of the seeker. Now, before diving into the Beast 666, It is essential that I contextualize the lens through which I view these mysteries, my own spiritual path. My journey has always been rooted in the profound depths of Sufism, specifically as a proud initiate of the Naqshbandi and Qadariya tariqas originating from Pakistan, Eidgah Sharif, Golara Sharif, Morda Sharif, and all of the initiatic brotherhoods that I am a part of. These ancient unbroken chains of transmission focus on the purification of the heart, the silent and vocal remembrance of the divine, and the disciplined annihilation of the ego. It is a path of rigorous spiritual alchemy that traces its lineage directly back to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the greatest saints of Islamic history. Furthermore, this lineage deeply intersects with the reverence of the Ahlul Bayt and the esoteric dimensions of the Fatimiyya Sufi order, which I am a representative of in North America for Sheikh Wahid Azal. And the Fatimiyya Sufi order is a post-Islamic bionic aspects of basically honoring the divine feminine, with Fatima al-Zahra being the godhead. Understanding the esoteric authority of the prophet's bloodline, the hidden spiritual hierarchies, and the cosmic function of the divine feminine in Islam provides a foundational matrix for recognizing truth wherever it echoes. It is precisely because of my grounding in these authentic, unbroken Islamic traditions that I can look at Western esoteric systems like Thelema and instantly recognize, let's say, the stolen, borrowed, or adapted Sufi blueprints hiding beneath the surface. Slide 4: Occult Warfare, the Hashashin, and How Time Works in Cyclical History. Now, we have a question in the current time. Are we seeing another cycle of history being played out in today's geopolitical and spiritual landscape? Absolutely. The occult aspects of current world events are profoundly illuminated when viewed through the lens of Shiite eschatology and the historical battles of the Crusades. We are looking at the exact same spiritual war fought by the spiritual descendants of the same factions. Think back to Hassani Sabah, the legendary old man of the mountain, and the Hashashin, the Nizari Ismaili order who utilized asymmetric warfare, absolute devotion, and esoteric initiation to counter massive empires. Today, this ancient conflict continues to manifest in hidden ways. Consider the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, a nexus of modern political negotiations and power brokering, which is owned by the Aga Khan, the present Imam of the Nizari Ismailis, and direct spiritual descendant of the forces that occupied Alamut. So 2 weeks ago, when the U.S. was there, right, to negotiate the ceasefire with the Iranians, it happened at the Serena Hotel in Islamabad, Pakistan, which is owned by the Aga Khan. Today, the ceasefire got extended as we speak, and the negotiations are happening at the same place. So the symbology, right? You have Pete Hegseth with the Jerusalem cross, and they're invoking this Crusader, Knights Templar stuff. They're negotiating with the Iranian leadership and their military heads and generals, which, quote unquote, you can view them as the Hashashin, and negotiating in a place which is symbolically owned by the Aga Khan. Now, the chessboard has modernized, but the pieces remain the same. The battle between exoteric empire and esoteric resistance, between the Crusaders' descendants and the hidden mystical orders, is actively shaping the world. We are living in a cyclical spiritual war where hidden hands still guide the visible reality. Discovering Crowley through Masonic lens. How did a devout Sufi practitioner like myself become interested in Aleister Crowley and Thelema? To be clear, I have never joined the OTO, nor do I follow Crowley as a prophet. My discovery of Crowley occurred during my own journey through Freemasonry. As I progressed through the degrees, studying the esoteric scaffolding of the West, Crowley's name continually surfaced. What fascinated me was not his public persona of scandal and libertinism, but his profound, often hidden respect for Islam, a respect that most Western occultists of his era entirely lacked. Was Aleister Crowley a Muslim? No, not in the orthodox sense of submitting to the Sharia. However, in my eyes, Crowley operated much like Mansur al-Hallaj, the controversial Sufi mystic who famously proclaimed, Ana al-Haq, I am the truth, and was executed for his perceived blasphemy. Like al-Halaj, and ironically, al-Halaj is included in the OTO degrees, especially the first and second. Crowley was an ecstatic provocateur who used shocking, transgressive language to tear down the rigid dogmas of his society. He recognized the profound initiatic power of Islam and utilized its spiritual technologies, walking a dangerous path of mystical intoxication that shattered the sensibilities of Victorian Europe. Moving on. Now we do the reconciling, right? The heresy. Crowley as Hassani Sabah, viewed through that lens. So, one of the most challenging aspects for any Muslim studying Crowley is reconciling his profound respect for Islam with the deeply derogatory statements found in his channeled text, the Book of the Law, most notably the infamous verse containing to peck at the eyes of Jesus and Muhammad, or even where he says, I flap my wings in the face of Muhammad. How do we process this? We must understand that Crowley was ritually embodying the chaotic adversarial archetype of Hassani Sabah. He was adopting the ultimate antinomian posture where nothing is true, everything is permitted. And even the chaos magicians of the West take that from Hassani Sabah. Crowley's role, as he saw it, was to utterly destroy the decaying Osirian aeon of old religious dogmas to make way for the aeon of Horus. Now, to do this, he had to become the ultimate iconoclast, attacking the most sacred symbols of all established faiths, including Islam, to shatter the psychological conditioning of his followers. Now, this was not a theological critique of the Prophet, peace be upon him, but a magical act of terror designed to force the initiate past the boundaries of conventional morality and into the absolute void of the abyss. It was the shock doctrine of the occult. Now we see the Islamic genealogy of Western esotericism. To truly grasp Crowley's work, one must confront a foundational truth buried by centuries of European myth-making. Western esotericism itself has profound Islamic roots. During the Islamic Golden Age, cities like Baghdad and Cordoba were the intellectual capitals of the world, where Muslim philosophers synthesized Greek, Persian, and Indian texts through the lens of Tawhid, divine unity, or in Freemasonry, believing in a supreme being. The Hermetic tradition, alchemy, and numerology that later sparked the European occult revival were essentially Islamic light filtered through Latin dust. This knowledge poured into Europe through the back door of Al-Andalus, shaping Jewish Cabala, early Rosicrucianism, and the esoteric structure of Freemasonry. Even the famous magical grimoire, the Picatrix, was authored by a Muslim scholar, rooted in an Islamic worldview. Therefore, when Crowley formulated Thelema, he was not inventing a system ex nihilo out of nothing. He was reactivating an ancient lineage that had passed through the hands of Muslim sages. Islam is not merely an influence on the occult, it is the very origin and spine of the tradition. Now, we look at the spiritual power of Cairo. For Aleister Crowley, the East was never just a theatrical backdrop, it was an occult mirror. My own experiences in Cairo validate exactly what Crowley felt. The city is a living matrix of spiritual voltage. When Crowley and his wife Rose arrived in Cairo in 1904, they found themselves immersed in an experiential Islam, surrounded by sacred geometry, Quranic recitation, and mystic gatherings. It was this vibrant, pulsing energy that primed him for his ultimate revelation. Cairo provided the paradox Crowley needed, a religion that was simultaneously legally rigorous and mystically ecstatic, right? The reception of the Book of the Law occurred within the walking distance of Al-Azhar University, the epicenter of Islamic knowledge. The Egyptian temples may have provided the architectural shell for his vision, but the actual initiatic current came from the living Islam that enveloped him. In Cairo, Crowley encountered a legacy written in Arabic and sung in Quranic cadence, which fundamentally altered his identity into a prophet of a new aeon. Now we look at Surah Al-Ikhlas. the dhikr that opened the aeon. One of the most mind shattering facts of modern occult history is that Crowley utilized Islamic Sufi practices to open the portal for his new religion. In Cairo, he did not merely study Islam, he absorbed and ritualized it. Crowley memorized Surah Al Ikhlas. He was given that zikr with the sheikh that initiated him, the profound Quranic declaration of absolute monotheism, and used it as his personal zikr of divine invocation. He repeated this sacred surah over 1,000 times until, in his own words, the channel opened for the reception of the Book of the Law. And this is where he encounters the entity named Lam. And Lam is one of the names of Allah. Alif, Lam, Mim. In Sufi terminology, this rigorous repetition to pierce the veil is known as the Khatam al-Asrar, the sealing of the secrets. Crowley recognized that the radical Tawheed expressed in Al-Ikhlas held the ultimate secret, that absolute unity is the highest magic. What he called the opening of the channel is known to Sufis as Fat, right? The lifting of the veil of the heart. He may have clothed his system in Egyptian gods, but the energetic key that unlocked the Aeon of Horus was pure recited Arabic. And Surah Al-Ikhlas is recited like this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. And it tells you that Allah is the God, the absolute truth. He neither begets nor is begotten, and there is no one like unto him. So as we move on, we look at Liber El and the Holy Quran. Now, the Book of the Law structurally, rhythmically, and mystically mirrors the Holy Quran, just as the Quran frequently dictates divine commands using the imperative, Kul, say. Liber El opens with a forceful initiation of speech, Had. Both establish absolute divine authority and command the prophet to act merely as a scribe for a higher voice. Crowley's entire experience of reception inherited its form, structure, and metaphysical grammar directly from the Islamic prophetic template. Furthermore, both texts share an unmatched internal cadence designed to be heard and vibrated rather than just read. The rhythmic, cascading verses of Liber El mimic the majestic stacking of clauses found in surahs like Al-Shams. Crowley also mirrored the Quranic concept of Laylatul Qadr, the night of power, receiving his transmission in a series of nocturnal sessions marked by sudden descending celestial power. Crowley enacted the role of a prophet modeled precisely on the Islamic archetype. Moving on to Iwas, Lam, and Allah. In Crowley's magical universe, entities like Iwas and Lam are seen as supreme guides. But through an Islamic lens, they reveal a profound connection to the Sufi science of divine names. Crowley described Iwas as a messenger, or Rasul, who functioned exactly like the archangel Gabriel, delivering divine revelation without error, how like Gabriel did with Muhammad. Similarly, the entity Lam corresponds to the Arabic letter Lam, which mystically stands for linkage and the innermost core of the soul, echoing the disjointed letters, the Muqattat, of the Quran. Most shockingly, Crowley repeatedly used veiled invocations of Allah in his highest rituals. He frequently utilized the phonetic and numerical representations of Allah, substituting it for traditional Gnostic names because he realized it was the most direct representation of infinite unity. In his cryptographic text, the name is sometimes spelled Allah, demonstrating his deep engagement with Arabic, the Ilm al-Haruf, the science of letters. He knew that to name is to invoke, and behind the Thelemic pantheon rested the vibration of the One, of Kul Huwallahu Ahad. As we move on, we look at the Sufi orders and the AA, the secret silsila chain. When Crowley established the AA as the elite path of the great work, he didn't invent its structure. He translated the Islami Sufi tariqa system, the AA's vertical chain of transmission where a student reports to a superior in an unbroken line. Perfectly mirrors the Sufi silsila, right? the chain of lineage, the spiritual genealogy tracing back to the prophet. Crowley explicitly stated that no man can initiate himself, echoing the absolute necessity of the Sufi Sheikh and the Ijaza, which is your spiritual permission and license. Moreover, the grades of ascension within the AA, from probationer to the epismus degree, are metaphysically identical to the Sufi maqamat, the spiritual stations. The Thelemic crossing of the abyss is functionally identical to the Sufi Fanafi Allah, annihilation in God, followed by Baqa, subsistence. Even the foundational mystery schools of the West are essentially rebrandings of much older Sufi lodge systems, the Zawiyas and the Khanqahs, designed to transmit divine knowledge through a sacred chain to the source. And the Prophet Muhammad is regarded as a grand magus of the AA. Now we look at the Kaaba and the Bullskin House. Now, to recreate a cosmic access in the West, Crowley relied heavily on the legacy of Sir Richard Francis Burton, the English explorer who infiltrated Mecca and deeply understood the metaphysical implications of the Kaaba, and he was a Freemason himself. Crowley mirrored this reverence by transforming his Scottish estate, the Bullskin House, into a spiritual Kaaba for the Thelemic current. Bullskin was not just a home, it was oriented as a temple of orientation, the Qibla of his initiatic system, right? In Islam, the Muslims pray 5 times a day facing Mecca. He did the same for his group as well, creating a Qibla. Now, just as Muslims orient their bodies towards Mecca, OTO initiates were instructed to orient themselves spiritually toward Bullskin during major rituals. Crowley even described the black fireplace at Bullskin as a mystery of absorption, directly mirroring the esoteric function of the black stone in Mecca as a boundary marker between seen and unseen worlds. His successor, Grady McMurdy, explicitly referred to the Bullskin as the Kaaba of Thelema, confirming that Crowley's spatial consciousness was entirely drawn from Islamic sacred geometry. What do you think, my brother, so far?
No, it's fascinating. Hold on one second. Let me. I don't want to. I don't want to. Actually, yeah, I don't want to get in the way of your presentation right now. Let me see.
Oh, perfect. I'll
Yeah,
continue then.
because continue because yeah, just continue. It's great. Thanks.
So now we look at slide 14, the Liber Resh and the rhythm of the Islamic prayer Salah. One of the most demanding daily practices in Thelema is the Liber Resh Vel Helios, a solar adoration ritual requiring the initiate to face the 4 cardinal directions at specific times of the day. While framed in Egyptian terminology, the structural function is absolutely identical to the Islamic Salah, the daily prayer. Both practices serve to mark time through ritual, sanctify geographical direction, and align the physical body and soul with the cosmic order. Crowley was acutely aware of this parallel. In his private letters, he even joked that Liber Resh was my Salah, minus the Arabic. Beneath the humor was a profound acknowledgement. He was consciously adopting the Islamic methodology of sanctifying time and space to anchor his own magical current. By implementing this rhythmic alignment, Crowley ensured his initiates tapped into the same deeply embedded, earth anchoring psychological architecture that sustains the Muslim Ummah globally. Now, the vision and the voice, the Algerian desert. In esoteric traditions, geography is never incidental, right? It's never like there is no coincidence here. The desert is the ultimate womb of revelation. In 1909, Crowley traveled to the Sahara Desert in Algeria with his disciple, Victor Newberg, to perform the grueling magical operation known as the vision and the voice. Crowley sought to cross the abyss and face the demon Choronzon in an environmental of total desolation, mirroring the prophet's withdrawal into the silent, elemental truth of Cave Hira. The Islamic concept of al-Maghrib, the West, symbolizes the place of concealment, the setting sun, and entry into divine darkness. Crowley consciously engaged with this Maghribi initiatic current, encountering Sufi zikr circles and desert hermits while operating in North Africa. He realized that the word may have begun in the east, Cairo, but its deepest echo and final initiatic crossing had to occur in the mystical sands of the Moorish West, where the self is annihilated to find the real. The Magus and the Prophet, Crowley's respect for Islam. Now, despite his reputation for blasphemy, Aleister Crowley harbored a profound hidden reverence for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. In the Thelemic hierarchy, the grade of Magus, right, is the highest active level, a logos bearer who utters a word that transforms the world. Crowley explicitly named Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a magician of the highest order and a master of the logos, recognizing him not just as a religious founder, but as an initiatic archetype of divine transmission. Crowley viewed himself as a functional successor to the prophet, bringing a law for a new aeon just as Muhammad, peace be upon him, brought the Sharia to his. Remarkably, in his writings, Crowley often used the honorific, peace be upon him, when referring to the prophet, a level of respect he fiercely denied to figures like Christ or Moses. He saw the prophet's mission, the solitude, the revelation of unity, the hijrah, and the sacred, polity as a perfected formula of magical conquest. That sacred politics, to say the least. So now we move on to the Gnostic Mass and the shadow of Minbar. So the Gnostic Mass is considered the ritual of Thelema, ostensibly borrowing from Catholic liturgy, but its true spatial and symbolic architecture owes a massive depth to the Islamic mosque. The ritual takes place in the rectangular space with a clearly defined east-facing high altar, perfectly mirroring the Qibla and the mihrab, the sacred niche that draws the congregation's soul towards divine unity, right? The dynamic between the priest and the priestess acts as a dramatic embodiment of the mihrab imam access for that congregation. Even the climactic delivery of the law in the Mass, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, is executed in the exact tone and setting of the khutbah, the sermon delivered from the minbar during Islamic Friday prayers. The physical gestures of the Mass, including the standing, bowing, and prostration, mirror the cosmic postures of Salah, aligning the body to a divine flow. Stripped of its Egyptian veneer, the Gnostic Mass is functionally a westernized initiatic reconstruction of mosque architecture. The Caliphate in Islam and Thelema. Crowley envisioned a global spiritual aristocracy, like an aristocratic system to steward Thelemic law, centralized under the title of the outer head of the order, the OHO. He modeled this executive spiritual stewardship directly on the Islamic institution of the Caliphate, the Khilafah. Just as the Islamic Caliph is the protector of the Sharia and the shadow of God on earth, Crowley positioned the OHO as the living embodiment of the Aeon, the esoteric guardian entrusted with manifesting divine will on the terrestrial plane. It is incredibly fascinating that the Orthodox Islamic Caliphate was dissolved in 1924, precisely during the era Crowley was consolidating his authority as the OHO. Officially claiming the title in 1922, he instituted a system of initiatic succession and ijaza, right, spiritual permission, to ensure the purity of the transmission line, knowing that no one may claim law without the chain, right, the silsila. After his death, his successors officially adopted the term caliphate to describe the OTO's leadership structure, permanently embedding Islamic political mystical theology into Western magic. And the first two degrees mirror the Sufi teachings, and Mansur al-Hallaj is featured in those degrees. So now we see the hidden imams and the secret chiefs. In Shia Islam, the cosmos is spiritually anchored by the hidden imam, al-Mahdi, a withdrawn, infallible guide who preserves the inner dimensions of religion and directs the worthy from behind a veil of occultation, the gaib. Crowley introduced an identical concept to Western occultism, the secret chiefs. He described them as disincarnate, perfected adepts who invisibly govern human spiritual evolution and intervene in history at crucial astrological moments. They also called them the Rijal al-Ghaib, the men of the unseen. The descriptions of the hidden imam and the secret chiefs are functionally interchangeable. Both assert that true authority is invisible but real, right? Presence is spiritual rather than material, and access is granted only through extreme purity, not institutional rank. Crowley believed his contact with Aiwass was orchestrated by these secret chiefs, just as Shia cosmology teaches that revelation and guidance operate through and under the ultimate authority of the hidden pole, the Kutub. They are the Western echo of an Eastern archetype. So even that whole thing about the Great White Brotherhood and the secret chiefs, whether you see that in the Crowley stuff or Golden Dawn or wherever you see it, right? It all comes from Islam. The sword of the saints, jihad and true will. In the Western media, jihad is grotesquely reduced to a holy war. But in mystical Islam, the greater jihad is the supreme internal battle against the ego, your nafs, delusion, and forgetfulness. This mirrors Thelema's core directive, the discovery and execution of the true will. It is not a path of hedonism, but a ruthless, disciplined war against the false will and social conditioning. Crowley famously wrote, "The discovery of one's will is the great war. To achieve it is to conquer all. So know thyself." Both systems utilize the archetype of the warrior mystic and the symbol of the sword. In Sufism, the sword of the saint cuts away illusion with the remembrance of God. In Thelema, the adept wields the sword of insight to pierce the abyss. Crowley's path was essentially jihad rhetoric in occult clothing. The ultimate victory in both paths is not physical domination, but total annihilation of the false self in absolute alignment with divine will. Now, Thelema and the modern spiritual war. Has Thelema lived up to Crowley's grand vision of a new aeon, right? That's the question. Now, looking at the current landscape of the OTO and modern occultism, one would argue it has fractured into administrative squabbles and lost the fiery, world shaking initiatic edge that Crowley channeled. As the global spiritual war rages on with the descendants of the Hashashin and the Crusaders clashing over the destiny of humanity, much of modern Thelema seems sidelined, trapped in theatrical ritual, rather than engaging in the fierce, world altering greater jihad of the will. Which side is Thelema on regarding the current spiritual warfare? True Thelema, like true Sufism, stands against the enslaving dogmas of exoteric empires and the materialist forces seeking to crush the human spirit. However, the institutions claiming Crowley's mantle today often fail to wield the sword of the saints. The true initiates, the real magi of this era, are operating outside formal structures, engaging in the hidden occult warfare that shapes reality, aligning their will with the cosmic trajectory, just as the hidden Sufi masters have done for centuries. Now, now we do the conclusion, light upon light, nur ala nur. As we conclude, we must recognize that Crowley's revelation in Cairo was not the beginning of something entirely new, but the unconscious echo of something ancient and profoundly Islamic. Both traditions anchor their law in the concept of divine will, and both place light, nur, at the absolute center of their cosmology. Light upon light, the Quran declares and Crowley echoes, seeking the invisible, piercing light of the holy guardian angel. This presentation is not an attempt to blend religions, but a mirror reflecting their shared metaphysical blueprints. Crowley walked the same desert, invoked the same names, and sought the same ultimate unity, Tawheed. Let us take these teachings, respect the undeniable Islamic framework that props up the Western occult tradition, and continue our own greater jihad. From the crescent to the star, from the word to the will, there is only light. That is our goal. Whether it's masonry or all these other paths, seek the light. Thank you for watching Esoteric Guides TV. This is whom the presentation is dedicated to. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. And all my work is for the purpose of fair use, right? Education, free speech, entertainment purposes, etc., etc. Thank you.
Cool. Let me get you back here. Hold on. Oops. Where'd you go? Damn it.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. And let me get in there. And I am. Yeah. Wow. That was an amazing. Something I've been interested in ages. This is great. Because so many people overlook the Islamic influence on Western Hermeticism and esoteric thought. Because the Picatrix played such a big role in medieval Europe. And even with geomancy, a lot of people teach geomancy, but they neglect the fact that it came actually from North Africa. So this is
Yeah.
really refreshing. I spent a lot of time in Cairo. So in your book, you do talk about the power of Cairo, right? Is as because that's where the Book of Law was channeled. Um, when I went to Cairo, I was reading a lot of Kenneth Grant. This is years ago, and he talks about Fustat, the spiritual energy of Fustat. So his
Mm,
whole thing, and I think he was right, being a Thelemite, was that he called Cairo a layered magical city. Um,
yes.
so with an ancient strata beneath the visible city, an Islamic era overlays an older Egyptian current, right? So I think that's a perfect, when you feel that magic of old Cairo. Um, I mean, really, it is being the magic actually is being sort of channeled through the Islamic current. But I think a lot of Thelemites don't embrace that at all. At least the ones I've met, and I've been to a number of Thelemic events where they, nuit, and they'll go and show these, steel of revealing and all of the Egyptian elements, but they completely neglect Crowley's Islamic sort of fascination, right? Um,
You know what's interesting? I had this one guy on Amazon leave me a 1-star review for the book because he believed I had an axe to grind with Western esotericism. But like I showed you in this presentation, that it's like what Islam teaches us in the Quran. Allah tells us that we have created you into a nation of, tribes and nations as mankind, so you may get to know one another. We need to establish that bridge between the East and the West, whether it's the Crowley stuff, OTO, Thelema, Freemasonry, Knights Templar, Rosicrucianism. We have a shared intellectual heritage with one another where we should celebrate one another. And even in Cairo, we see the special lodges over there. Hassani Sabah was initiated in Cairo. Even the
wow.
current, the Aga Khan the Fifth, the current one we have, his father is buried in Cairo. So Cairo is a very special place, and the beauty of Islam is that Islam, most people don't know this esoteric secret of the Islam and the Quran. So since the time of Gilgamesh and the Sumerians, Islam, that was the religion was Islam since day one, submission to the will of God. So that religion was the same religion being revealed in stages, from Gilgamesh to Moses to Abraham to Solomon to Muhammad. That's why in Surah 5 Allah tells you, I revealed your religion in stages, and now with Islam as the final revelation I have perfected your religion. So even the ancient Egyptian stuff, that was Islam in revelation in its early stages, the Tawheed, right? The oneness of God, the initiatic systems. So it's basically just like how Islam tells us to give respect to the Torah and the Bible. The ancient Egyptian and Sumerian systems fall in that same alignment of that same divine revelation that was perfected with Prophet Muhammad and the final revelation.
It's interesting you mentioned Hassan and Sabah and his initiation in Cairo. I think one of the most spiritual areas in the old city of the old part of Cairo is the City of the Dead, right? Which
Yeah.
was originally built by the Fatimids, who were Shiite, very mystical. Uh, yeah. So, and again, your teacher's a Shiite, right? He's and so I think a lot of that whole Sufi current does flow through Shiism.
Yes.
right? Because I think most Sufi orders, except for Naqshbandis, I mean, they have Ali as their sort of one of the spiritual currents. But
Oh
tell
yeah,
me a little bit more.
definitely.
Yeah.
And even in the Sufi orders, if you don't have the blessings of Hazrat Ali in your corner, it's practically like it's nil. Even if you are like a Sunni Sufi order, the reverence for Mullah Ali, Hazrat Ali, is like second to none. And we see that in today's world where Islam has been persecuted nonstop. And Shia Islam has kind of vindicated itself as the vanguard of Islam, that they are the only ones that stood up and fought back while people see the Sunni leaders as infiltrated and compromised, right? So now Shia Islam is definitely the esoteric stuff, even the Ismaili cosmology. It's truly powerful, and giving respect to Hazrat Ali. That if you establish that connection with Hazrat Ali, then all of the obstacles in your life will go away. The only thing you gotta say is Ya Ali Madad, Ya Ali help me. And whether you're facing money problems, job problems, you're dealing with enemies, start with the full intention, Ya Ali, please help me. Ya Ali, help me. Those doors will open for you.
Yeah, I had a Sufi teacher told me that the Ismailis, in particular, had all the secrets of Islam, in their teachings. And I was
Yes.
looking over, it was actually the Fatimids that actually named Cairo El Qahira, the conqueror, right? And
Yes.
also dedicated to the planet Mars, right? It was
Yep.
rising in the sky at the time when the construction of the city started, and that way it was located northeast of Fustat, which is the original old capital. But it's funny in Fustat, when I went there reading Kenneth Grant, looking for that whole magical current, what I found in Fustat was one of the biggest mosques in Cairo, which I found was really interesting.
Hmm.
But it happened to be a Salafi mosque, but it was,
And
again.
that's very interesting. I recommend another book for your audience, Cyclical Time and Ismaili Gnosis by Henry Corban, which is
Oh, Henry
absolutely
Kaban.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. And it talks about how we live in these different aeons, and it truly reflects what Crowley's talking about. How there's different aeons, how time works in cyclical nature. Even what we're seeing now with the conflict between the descendants of the Hashashin and the Knights Templar, where whether you look at the Assassin's Creed video games, those teachings and imagery is symbolically tied in, where we realize that back and forth we go across the world and across the ages. So it's something that doesn't end with one conflict or one issue. This is a continuous influence over humanity and what we are leaving behind as the stewards of planet Earth. Because Sufism teaches you that it's the insan, the man, you are God's representative on this earth. So angels, demons, good, bad, your free will and accord, it channels through you, the human being, depending on what path you choose to follow. So it's like what Omar Khayyam says, Hassan Sabbah's best friend, the poet. I myself am heaven and hell. So depending on what you choose to channel by subduing your ego through your free will and accord, that's the reality you create for yourself. And that's the beauty where Allah has told us that I have made you the vicegerent of this earth. I've given you the planet, the resources. You can't blame me or anyone else. You take responsibility for yourself, the world around you, and basically it's yours to experience.
Any predictions on the current conflict now? Because I know there's a lot of Islamic eschatology on this.
I, I would say that everything works in cyclical time. I remember in 1996 when I immigrated from Pakistan here to America, and I asked my mother, like, "Hey, mom, what was the reason why we left and came here?" She said the food quality was no good, the electric and water was no good, there weren't no jobs, the medical, education, et cetera, et cetera. You couldn't get a job unless you knew somebody. Now the same conditions are over here in America, right? Cyclical, everything works in cyclical nature. Before it was good here. Now what we're seeing is that true quality of life and that peace and good food and good health and being able to get ahead, now it's shifting to the east. What we're seeing now is the forming of the new multipolar world order, where that hegemony of, let's say, the UK and the US is now going away. And now what we're seeing is now everyone will have a say on the world stage and the world politics. So when we get to the post 2030 world, it's not going to be the domination of just America alone. All countries will have a say now, whether they're white, non white, European, non European. Before, America was dominating itself, right? Even with the UN, they had that advantage of the single veto vote at the Security Council, and everyone else had practically no power at all. So now everyone will have an equal seat at the table: the Europeans, the Africans, the Asians, the Middle Eastern crowd, even Pakistan, right? Like in its diplomatic role currently, trying to resolve the issue. So now we're going to see that power and influence shift away from the US. That's basically what's going to happen once this is all said and done. Everyone's going to have an equal seat at the table in the new multipolar world order of the post 2030 world. Do you
So,
notice how the Saudis are taking over the American entertainment industry with the wrestling, with the
all right.
UFC, and all of the sports events? Like next year's WrestleMania with WWE is going to be in Saudi Arabia. That's like their
Oh, I did
Super
not know
Bowl.
that.
And
Wow.
so, what the Saudis are doing is they're taking all of the American entertainment venues, they're slowly transitioning them for their Project 2030. So,
Hmm.
yep, that's what's going to happen.
Interesting. Yeah, things are shifting. All right. Um, Tell me a little bit more about the Fatimiyya Sufi order. How
Sure,
does one get
sure.
involved? Do you have zikrs or what's the? I know that I've read some of the teachings of Sheikh Wahid, very profound, especially his Burhatiya and all that. And I've heard a lot of great things. But how does one, if someone's interested, how do they join?
Yeah, so the Fatimiyya basically has an open door policy. Once you're in, that's between you and God. You're practically in. And there are zikrs and practices you could do which align with the planets and the energies. And basically, it's giving reverence to the divine feminine. So the Shahada for the Fatimiyya Sufi order is La ilaha illallah, like there is no God but God. And Fatima is the face of God, right? So Fatima, or the divine feminine, is regarded as like the true embodiment of existence, the goddess, or the goddess. Even how some Sufis regard Allah, right? The Sufis are lovers of God. So just to be in the goddess's good graces, and how everything comes from the divine feminine nature. And the Fatimiyya Sufi order itself is a, let's say, post Islamic Shia Sufi order, and it's like the Azali Babi split that happened with the Baha'is, and it incorporates all of those teachings into it. So it's very profound, very esoteric, but your heart must be in the right place. And I am the representative of Sheikh Wahid Azal in North America for Canada and the US. So anyone interested, they can reach out to me. I can give you the study material, the Zikr stuff, what to do, and basically to they take your hand in my hand as the Sheikh's representative, and to give you the blessing, per se, to start your journey. And even the most profound commandment of the Fatimiyya Sufi order is the commandment number 3, where even the Sheikh himself tells you that you don't need to listen to any bureaucrat, politician, popular consensus, sheikh, guru, astrologer. Follow thine own inner light. What Rumi says, listen to that voice inside that does not speak. That is Almighty God guiding you, right? So you must follow thine own inner light. If you do that, then you're already living by the principles of the NOR FSO. But if you're somebody who wishes to contribute, help the order grow, spread the teachings, then please reach out to me.
One of the big issues in the Islamic world is the whole rift between Shiite and Sunni. Do you see this rift ending at some point, or the two sides becoming closer?
I think at this point it's ending now, because we see how even the Sunnis are giving the Shias their due credit. and they're looking at their leaders like, okay, ever since the genocide is happening in Gaza, or the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, or whatever is happening in the modern times, right? They're looking at their leaders like, you guys didn't do anything. It was only the Shias that fought back, whether it was the Iranians, the Yemeni Houthis, Hezbollah, all of them, they're all Shia, right? So the Sistani militias in Iraq. So most Sunnis and Shias are now coming together, and the Shias are vindicated. And even I think Dugan recently put out an article calling Shias the vanguard of Islam. So we see that rift now closing, and the Ummah is going to be united. And that goal of, let's say, British intelligence with Lawrence of Arabia to kind of create the Wahhabi Salafi sects and the extremist head chopping sects within Islam, and or to infiltrate and compromise Islam. I think the younger generation, even the ones after me, I'm a millennial, but Generation Z and Alpha, they see right through that. I got faith in these kids. I think it's something beautiful you and I will see in our lifetime.
So regarding Thelema, do you think Thelema has lived up to Crowley's vision as being like a worldwide religion?
I don't think so, because a lot of them are too busy. Like, it's just like Freemasonry, everyone's focused on the titles and ranks. Oh, I'm a 33rd, I'm a past master, I'm in these special groups, and you're beneath me. So I think the Thelema people have kind of lost the initial step of what Crowley was teaching. Crowley respected Islam, like that one guy who gave me a 1-star review, claiming to be a lifelong Thelema follower, that I have an axe to grind with Western esotericism, which is not true. I gave Crowley his due regards. My problem is you got to bridge that gap between the East and the West, so we can give respect to all sides equally. Just like even with Golden Dawn, geomancy comes from the Islamic, drawing on the sand and pounding on the sand and stuff. So it's not like I'm not giving them their due respect and regard. You do your thing. You grow as a person, you help yourself, help others, but you got to respect the whole lineage. That's when you have true blessing in your group and in your mission, when you recognize the full lineage. If you're a seeker of light, look at all sides of the fence. It's like even with Neoplatonism, the concept of the theurgy of Neoplatonism of tracing your origin back to the one, right? Allah. If you look at ancient philosophies, the ancient Persian philosophies, even the Vedic philosophy from India, the Samkhya, that predates Neoplatonism. It's not about who got what right first or who did it first. That's not the point of what I try to do. I try to be like, hey, we're one ummah. One ummah means we're all connected through race and religion. Islam and the Quran teaches us that too, that Allah created us into nations and tribes so we can get to know one another. Even the Prophet Muhammad said that seek knowledge as far as unto China, and how even in Surah 2, verse 62, Allah tells you in the Quran that He doesn't care what religion you're following, as long as you're an upright, righteous individual. Then on the day of judgment, you shall have no grief or judgment. Now, for my friends in the Western traditions or occult systems, whether it's Masonry, Thelema, don't get lost in the superiority stuff, right? That you only give credit to European sources or Greek or Roman sources. And even the Greeks were a multicultural society. I mean, look at the Greeks today, they look Middle Eastern. So it's not about like any superiority or putting anyone or anything down. Take a little bit from all sides and apply that to your life. Buddhism has something good to teach you. Christianity has something good to teach you. Islam has something good to teach you. Take all of that and love and respect all of it as emanations of the one, right? So it's like if I want to go to New York from Philly, I can catch a bus, I can catch a taxi, I can catch a train, I can even catch a plane, right? It takes 30 minutes to get to New York using a plane. But no matter what route I use or whatever vehicle I use, it's all serving me the same purpose. As long as you don't hurt yourself or hurt others, you're fine. Just live a good, clean life. And on the day of judgment, you shall have no grief or punishment, as it says in the Quran, Surah 2, verse 62.
Cool. That's well said. Thank you very much. And, Thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, Islam, brother. Much love to you.